All right, welcome everyone. So glad to be back at the collective. And thank you again for all you guys do to keep this going. It's always nice to know that you're holding it down on 24th Street, Just really appreciate all the light and brightness you bring into the world for everyone. So thank you, all the work that you guys do. And thank you for inviting me back. I'm so happy to be back. Let's go ahead and open circle. I'll say a phrase and you can say it after me. The sun is a circle.
The sun is a circle.
The moon is a circle.
The moon is a circle.
The earth is a circle.
The earth is a circle.
The drum is a circle.
The drum is a circle.
We are a circle within a circle.
We are a circle within a circle.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm just going to get a quick drink. Sorry, I've been drinking, but. So we're here doing a class on the Paramitas. And of course, the Paramitas are very important set of states that one must cultivate in order to be able to bring oneself to a higher level of understanding. And I thought what we would do with this class is take one paramita each night. And so the paramitas, I have to remember them all. Let me see. Okay, we got, who knows the paramita? Let's do a paramita. Call out a paramita if you know one. Here you go.
Generosity.
Generosity, yes.
Patience.
Patience, good. Joyful enthusiasm, great. Ethics, okay.
Drive, very
Yeah, effort.
meditation.
Meditation, patience, diligence, discipline, yeah. Yeah, right. Wisdom. Yeah, so we got a lot of them, right? Did you hear that? I know everybody heard it online? Yeah, I think I repeated it, right? Yeah, so, okay. So we're going to do generosity tonight. And also the other aspect of this class, this actually, it was Noam who gave me the idea for this class because he was saying that he liked it when I answered questions, which I really appreciate. Thank you. And I actually like to answer questions. So I was thinking that doing a kind of practice instruction around the paramitas might be helpful. Because, generosity, for instance, it's a little bit complicated because of all the issues around boundaries that it brings up. And I know a lot of people who have complications around generosity in my practice, my depth hypnosis practice. And I'd like to read a story that kind of covers a lot of ground around some of the issues that I see. I know for myself you'll see, this is actually a pretty personal story here. For myself, I know with generosity, people tend to either overgive or undergive. It's a thing that people often have, and people have reasons for giving that have more to do with not necessarily giving. That a lot of times people will give to get, and then you get ensnared in that as the person who's the object of that, and then there's a lot of issues that come up for people. And a lot of times you have people who have a generous spirit that want to offer something that is not received by the other person or by other people, and then people think there's something wrong with them because the things they want to offer to the world are not received in the way that they had hoped. I mean, there's just so many permutations of generosity that I see coming through my office, and they often boil down to boundaries. And some people are like really withholding, and that will create a particular response in another person. And there are people that will withhold in order to be able to kind of manipulate people and create that response. And then people find themselves being taken advantage of, and, it goes on and on, right? It's just, welcome to my depth hypnosis practice, right? And it's, personally, I think it's really important to honor our generous spirit, and to honor the generous spirit in another. So I think, and the way we get to that is by a long and winding road to look at how we receive and how we give, right? So let me read this story to you. So this is a story about Thupten Jinpa, who is a good friend of the sacred streams, and I can gratefully say a good friend of mine. He is His Holiness the Dalai Lama's main English language interpreter. He's the former, he's still on the board, but he's the former head of Mind and Life. He is an adjunct professor at McGill University. He's been a visiting scholar at Stanford University, created the Compassion, the Sea Care protocol. He's translated billions of words. He's the president of Tibetan Classics, which is a project of really translating all of the major Tibetan Buddhist texts. I don't know when he sleeps or when he eats. I know when he eats because I've eaten with him, but he's an amazing man, and he actually asked us to Sacred Stream to host a tour, a cultural exchange between the monks of the Gaden Shartse Dokang, which was his dormitory growing up, and in Karnataka, in the Tibetan settlement in southern India. And before he left the monastery, that was his house. And they went through a series of intense set of events, which left them without a dormitory. It left them with no place to live, and they were all couch surfing around in the monastery. And so they needed to raise funds to build another dormitory for their house. So he asked if we would sponsor a cultural exchange. So you don't say no to Jinpa, right? You just do not say no to Jinpa. So we had 8 monks live with us for the better part of a year at our house. And for the rest of the year, they were traveling across the United States, giving blessings, doing sand mandalas, doing empowerments. And, this was a big thing that we did, and we got to know the monks really well, and it was really a magical time. So this is kind of backstory for this story that I'm getting ready to tell you. So the morning after Jinpa left, the Tibetan Buddhist monks of the Gaden Shartse Dokang, who had been staying with us for several months, were sitting around our breakfast table with us as they did each morning. But this morning, we were all a bit shell-shocked. As we sat together, we all felt that we were sitting still in the presence of Jinpa. We drank our tea, and I tried to eat the lovingly prepared, cold, very fried eggs. But none of us really had much of an appetite. We were all trying to digest our good fortune at having just spent 48 hours of completely unstructured time with Thupten Jinpa, or Jinpa as he prefers to be called. He is a scholar renowned throughout the Tibetan Buddhist community. In spite of his fame, Jinpa is humble, attentive, and soft-spoken. Jinpa had come to San Francisco from his home in Montreal to visit the monks, whose home was in South India. By the way, Jimpa means generosity, in case you guys didn't know. A little tip there. They were meeting Jimpa had come to San Francisco from his home in Montreal to visit the monks, whose home was in South India. They were meeting in the middle. I tried not to make any jokes about the middle way when we realized where they were meeting. The monks were at the end of a year-long tour across the United States that we had directed at the request of Jimpa. During the tour, they had visited college campuses, churches, temples, private homes, and retreat centers, sharing the wisdom of their Buddhist tradition as they raised funds for their new prayer hall and dormitories. The monks in particular understood the gift we had been given by having Jimpa with us in such an intimate setting. The gift was the presence of Jimpa. He had spent hours and hours with us over the last few days, talking and laughing, moving seamlessly from Tibetan to English and back, including us all in a conversation that seemed to be taking place in just one language through his skillful interpreting. Up until this time, as adults, the monks had only been able to chat with him or sit with him for brief amounts of time in ceremonies or in teachings. His duties as His Holiness's interpreter took him far and wide from the monastery, and his choice to step out of the monk's robes had created a separation between them in everyday life. But they had felt the gulf shrink as our days together had unfolded. Jimpa and the monks had spent a lot of time reminiscing about the days of their youth, growing up in South India after their parents had fled Tibet with the Chinese occupation of Tibet. They told stories about their old masters who cared for them and who taught them in the monastery, while their parents worked on the road crews for the Indian government. These monks, Geshe Gyaltsen, Geshe Tenle, Geshe Donyo, had roomed with Jimpa as young monks in the monastery. They had watched him as he grew into the promise of his brilliance as a great debater, and as he stepped into his duties as the principal English language interpreter of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Through all of these changes that took Jimpa away from them, their love for him remained steady. They were so happy to have had the last few days of meeting with him a world away from the adventures of young scholars. My own love for Jimpa arose first from a place within me I could not really name at the time. Like most Westerners, I had first encountered Jimpa when he was interpreting for His Holiness. At the time, I was working as a professional interpreter, so I knew his craft well, even though I worked in different languages. I remembered how dumbfounded I was when I first heard him start the interpretation of His Holiness's words. I understood deeply and all at once, and not at all how fully and completely, how he was conveying not only His Holiness's words, but also his intentionality. He was carrying the transmission of truth expressed at a subtle level across the divide of the language perfectly, so that we were all receiving from that transmission from His Holiness along with the meaning of his words. As an interpreter, I had always done my best to bridge the gulf of misunderstanding or lack of understanding that existed between two people or a group of people for whom I was interpreting. I had always taken my charge as that bridge very seriously and dedicated myself completely to the craft of translation. My love for words, which, when I was young, did not hold the depth of understanding about the nature of words that I had attained as I grew older, always sustained me. I had always found meaning in my efforts to create bridges between people. Even though I could not speak Tibetan, I knew I had met a master bridge maker as Jimpa continued to interpret hour after hour with very little break. This was the teachings where I first encountered him. I was stunned and awed by what I could perceive of his offering to us, and overwhelmed by what I could not perceive as I experienced Jimpa moving effortlessly in the mastery of his craft. He was bringing this ancient wisdom into modern time, even as he brought the meaning of the words from a language so far from English into effortless, beautifully phrased English. And all the while, he was bridging the Tibetan mindscape, which is so different from our own here in the West. He was bridging so many things at once that I was dizzy, and he was doing it all so effortlessly and beautifully that I was overcome. There was nothing to do but cry. And I cried for all 4 days of those teachings as the deeper and deeper levels of understanding about what Jinpa was doing with those words dawned on me. As we were sitting around the table that morning, we all offered our first memory of Jinpa. There were long gaps of silence between each person's recounting of their first memory of Jinpa. Geshe Gyaltsen talked about wrestling with him when they were boys, and he talked about the way in which their old master would pull their ears when they did not have a teaching mastered correctly. Geshe Donyo, in his ineffable, quiet way, and in just a few words, expressed affection for Jinpa that I could feel radiating throughout his being. He spoke of the times they rode the monastery's tractor together as they were working in the fields of the Tibetan settlement. He talked about their shared excitement when the tractor had arrived. The tractor was a miracle, and they delighted in it together. They had all been clearing the jungle by hand, this was the jungle that the Indian government had offered the Tibetans after they had lost their homeland to the Chinese. They had to clear acres and acres of land to make a space to rebuild their monastery and create the simple makeshift houses that made up the Tibetan settlement in those early days. Geshe Thinley described his awe in the debate hall as Jinpa emerged from the group of monks in his class as the champion of the debate competitions that were held annually between all the major monasteries. The role of debate is central to the education of the academic monastic universities, and debate champions are recognized as erudite and masterful scholars. There is no higher honor than to be named debate champion. Geshe Gyaltsen, Donye, Thinley, and Jinpa were part of the same house, the Dokong, at the Gaden Shartse Monastery. They all had grown up in exile, and when Jinpa was very young, he came with his parents across the high snows of Tibet through the Himalayas to India to escape Chinese oppression. As we sat around the table, he told stories about the prison that had been their first stop in India. It was filled with flies and bugs of all types, and heat and disease. He recounted stories of how many loved ones had died in that place. They all recalled the hardships of the long trip south to the jungle, where they worked so hard to create a new life, and where they learned the Dharma together. When my turn came to speak, I tried to express my experience of being taught something deep and ineffable just from Jinpa's presence. I tried to explain that I felt us all receiving wave after wave of clarity and purpose from his presence. Jinpa means generosity in Tibetan. It is one of the 6 perfections that also include joyful perseverance, patience, wisdom, ethical discipline, and concentration. The development of these qualities is an essential task of the developing bodhisattva, a being in Mahayana Buddhism who seeks to help other beings step out of suffering. These are the essence of an enlightened state of being. Until I had met Jinpa, my understanding of the word generosity had been a bit intellectual. As a child, I could feel my own generous nature rising up in me more easily. But as an adult, I had found it rising less easily as I found it best to hold back in order to avoid the pain of having it rebuffed or misunderstood by those around me. Jinpa's grace of being had none of these twists and turns. His presence seemed to go into the places where the twists around giving and receiving existed within me and untwist them. His effortlessness and sharing of himself made it safe for me to share myself. And over the last few days, his open heart created a deep and wide space for each person to present themselves to him and to be seen fully and thoroughly. When he looked into me, I felt him showing me the places where I could no longer open my heart the way that he did. When I felt the level of spaciousness that Jinpa created for me, as he created for everyone, I recognized that it was a spaciousness I had not afforded myself in a very long time. As I sat with him at that table, I could feel the rumbling of all of the constriction and denial within me breaking open as the waves of spaciousness and generosity from Jinpa flowed into the hearts of my being. I had forgotten about, or perhaps of all the places in my being I had forgotten about, or perhaps which I had never known. The day before, as we rested in Jinpa's presence, I think we all could feel those waves that emanated from him as he was simply sipping his tea. Each of us tried to express our experience in different ways, but when words failed, we all just pointed to our love for Jinpa. As we sat in the silence that followed, each of our attempts at expressing our experience at the breakfast table that morning after Jinpa had left, those waves were still palpable. I felt a new kind of kinship with the monks as we stopped struggling to express our experience in words. I felt that we understood what the other was trying to say by sharing our intention in silence. Every once in a while, one of us would try to articulate again our experience of Jinpa's generosity. One of my efforts went something like this. In the West, when we speak about generosity, it generally has to do with money or some material thing. We think about generosity having to do with the sharing of material goods. We think about generosity as a kind of duty that you engage in because you should, not because you necessarily want to. We talked about generosity being something that is not even really a value to aspire to in the West. People don't see it as something to be treasured or cultivated, even when it comes to material goods. The monks were surprised when they heard about my thoughts about generosity in the West. Despite the fact that they had lived for so long with so much material deprivation, generosity as a value in relationship to material goods was a given for them. Spiritually, it was a natural part of their lives, a natural spring of experience that arose within them. This particular direction of discourse soon collapsed back into silence. Then Geshe Gyaltsen went and got a book in Tibetan. It was a Tibetan book that was wrapped in a saffron cloth, the kind that has no binding, but is made up of individual pages of writing held together by a wood or stiff cardboard at the bottom and the top of the pages. He read the story of the Buddha who was offered dirt by a young child who was playing in the dirt as he passed by. Dirt was the only thing he had to offer the Buddha, and so he offered it. The official who was accompanying Buddha started to chase the child away, and Buddha said, "No, this child has offered me something of great value. He has offered me the only thing he has." This child has offered me something of great value. He has offered me the only thing he has, and he has offered it with joy and sincerity and kindness. So do not push him away. Do not ask him to go. Let us stay here together. As Geshe Gyaltsen read the story in Tibetan, all the monks nodded their heads. Then he kindly translated it for me. I knew the story, but I understood it in a new way. As we moved into silence again, I was so grateful to the monks for being my teachers. I was so grateful to the monks for being my fellow students to a great master like Jinpa. And I was so grateful so grateful that the path of my life had led me into contact with Jinpa. And I wished that all beings could experience him as we had over the last few days. Hopefully you get a little bit of it, or hopefully a lot of it. So I wanted to read this story about generosity because, as I said at the beginning, generosity is very complex in the West, and the way that Jinpa makes it so effortless, is just such a teaching. And it makes me think, when he was given his Dharma name, his master who gave him his Dharma name had to have seen this in him, right? So it's kind of wonderful. So I just want to see if anyone has any comments or questions about the story before we do the meditation we're going to do on generosity. Yeah.
Like, of the many ways people can be generous, the generosity of the teaching of the Dharma is so,
Yeah.
it's just so strong and beautiful, and so that's a lot of what I heard in the story.
Yeah. No, that's so true. You know, when you have a good teacher, you feel the
Yeah, you
generosity
feel-
of teachings coming through.
You feel it.
Yeah.
So
It's
strong.
just like, what a boon, you know? Yeah.
Thank you.
I also feel like it's, I had always thought about generosity from the giving part of it, like, am I being a generous person by giving? And I've lately come to understand there's something about receiving that is really like that if I can receive what somebody's giving, it's an act of generosity, or if I can receive the way the world is, it's an act of generosity. And I feel like I've been, I guess I feel like I've got a lot of growing to do in terms of my capacity to receive, because I sort of understand about the giving and how it's complicated, because like I want, now I gave you something, so I want something in exchange, or I feel like I own you in some measure because I gave you this money or whatever. So I feel like I understand the barriers there, but it feels like I'm still trying to understand the barriers in my particular place about receiving things as they are. And it's so lovely to meet people who can do that, who can show that, and
Who can receive? You mean?
who can give and who can receive.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, there's a certain vulnerability in receiving, right? Like to be able to really open
Right.
to receive,
To actually receive, not to just
Yeah.
say, "Oh, how nice!
Yeah.
It's great."
Yeah,
but
but-
to actually receive.
Yeah.
Like when it was a year or so ago when you had that guest here, Geshe, who had the Tibetan orphanage.
Yes, Pima
Project.
Dorje, yeah.
Yeah, Dorje. It's like he was so generous in obviously everything he's doing. But then I remember asking a question, which I think looking back was kind of a stupid question, but he was so generous in like receiving my question and responding to it in a way that wasn't, it was just really recognized my humanity, and I just, it stuck with me.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, right behind you.
Well, I guess I had a question, or perhaps a point of debate, in that, when you said about the Western view not being generous, and I'm not a Christian myself, but I was raised within Christianity. Certainly, generosity is one of the key components of Christianity, and something that, in the small town I grew up in, people were very generous. And don't you think it's just like a natural, innate thing in all humans, and it's
Oh.
not such an East or West thing?
Oh, I do. I absolutely do. But and thank you for pointing that out. There are definitely spiritual traditions where generosity is very valued. Yeah. But I think that, maybe I made an incorrect dichotomy there. Maybe you're right. Yeah. But I know myself growing up, I didn't grow up in the States, so what do I know? But nobody ever, I never heard any discussion about generosity growing up, myself. And I don't know, maybe that's just my experience. Maybe I projected my experience too broadly. Yeah, thank you.
I guess I want to follow up on that. Even the Eastern generosity today, I don't think there's such thing because they don't receive it. Growing up, I don't think anyone thought I'll just take someone's generosity and then love them for it, it's always going to be, we have to write it down.
Write it down.
We have to write it down. We have to give it back. Every favor given needs to be returned. Or at least in East Asia, that's very much the concept of, right? So I'm just like, this is very strange. The whole like being able to give and then receive with no condition and just being loved by it, because that's, at least it's like you got to write it down. Like, and I think I still function my daily life to be like, if somebody gives you a favor, you got to remember it and give it back.
Wow.
And I think that says a lot about like the concept of self-love and how much we deserve to be given grace and love. Because I certainly don't think the Eastern part of the world feels they deserve to be loved and be taken care of.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting thing, these cultural biases around it. So interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I just thought I'd share this piece because it's just been an interesting reflection for me over the last 3 or 4 years. Well, maybe more, 4 or 5 years. When I first started doing like astrology or tarot readings for people, I would just offer them to people, feeling like that was a complete offering, like just like the giving of the reading was an offering because it was like something that I needed to do. It was like I needed to do that. And then there were people who were open to having readings. And what I started to learn quickly in that situation was that even if I didn't like want something outside of just the opportunity to give the reading or to offer the reading, I needed to start being open to receiving from people, because even if I said there was no, like, it was just like, I'm just happy to give this reading. Like, to me, the fact that they were sitting with me, making space for the reading seemed huge. They would give me things anyway. Like, they would try to give things to kind of say thank you, or their own kind of experience of them wanting to be generous in return. And that's been such an interesting thing for me over time of like having something to offer and knowing that the offering of that is complete, but then also recognizing that it's not complete because the receiver then has something to offer. I don't know, it just was like, it's just been an interesting kind of experience for me over time to sit in that place with people.
It's interesting because we're talking about energetic exchanges, right? You're talking about, we write it down, the exchange has to be exact, We're talking about energetic exchanges, and you're talking about like an energetic exchange, like you're offering this energy, and how do you receive it back? Like how, like what, are you able to receive it back? Or, like.
Well, and how important it is.
Yeah,
Like, that was
right.
something where I was like, no, it's really important that return is, that I'm open to that return. And it may be something to your point, like then it was more complete, if that, I don't know how you could be more complete than complete, but it like, my understanding of the completeness was inadequate until I started understanding, oh no, there's this two-way thing going on. And it's very important that I allow that to come back to me. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, yeah. That's like the energy exchange coming back, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Maybe this is a question for after, I'm not sure. But I've been thinking a lot about mudita and like the near and far enemy, and how I guess it kind of relates in that like jealousy might be the far enemy, but then the near enemy would be more of like an attached joy. Like, I'm only happy because I helped you be happy, or I'm only happy because I'll get something out of you being happy. And I was wondering if you had any words or any thoughts around that.
we're talking about empathetic joy, right? So, how, if you can only be happy for someone because of some secondary gain that you get out of it, then of course that's not empathetic joy, right? And I think, again, we're into the place of generosity, right? Because the thing about being really happy for someone, there's just like total openness, total generosity of spirit. There's no secondary gain. There's just this rejoicing, which if you have any kind of secondary gain idea, you can't be fully generous in your rejoicing. So I think it's really helpful to look I mean, we'll look at that next time. I think that would be maybe, because you're into jealousy, you're into covetousness, you're into, theft, you're into all kinds of things right there when you enter into that, and the inability to, all of the kinds of negative exchanges that can happen between people. So, yeah, maybe we'll explore that a little bit further. Yeah. Find a good reading on it for us.
So this is just a reaction or like some thoughts after Pamela's question. And I remember I read Louise Hyde's book on the gift. And I'm also curious, like, if the difference between the exchange happened between 2 and 3. So what I'm thinking, I don't know if I can put it into words. So say tomorrow, it's actually true. Like tomorrow I'm gonna give a reading to a friend, which he has been asking me, like, think about what you wanna get. But truly, like, the cost is a cup of coffee running the software. But what I tend to do if there's any reading is I would offer it up so that it's benefiting us or the greater, that I can feel settled, so that the energy of the exchange doesn't feel like it's like, I don't know, it's like if I know there's the witness or the Buddha field is holding us, and then offering whatever I do, like the merit or the action, it makes me feel it comes more naturally, and the energy, the giving and receiving feels more at ease. Yeah.
So is there any way in which you're not allowed to participate in that? Like, are you like in some way, like it can only be for the field, it can only be for the collective? Are you allowing yourself to receive that fully along with the rest of the collective?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you. It's so wonderful, to hear people, you have this like intention, like this strong intention in your practice, it's so wonderful to know that people are, like, that you are working in the world in that way, like, it's like, how wonderful, is, to meet you and know that you're doing that. And I know everyone here is practicing in that way, and this is the beauty of the Sangha, right? To be able to find each other, and to strive to understand things better together, Are there any questions online? Okay, all right. Okay, so we're gonna do a meditation. I promise we would meditate. Sorry, it took us a while to get here. So I want to teach you this method of meditating that it's a kind of Vipassana meditation. It's not the traditional Vipassana meditation, but first we'll do a shamatha meditation with a focus on the breath. And then we're going to do a meditation on generosity. And this method that I'm going to teach you is a method that I teach in the Applied Buddhist Psychology program. And it's, I call it the vine and bud Vipassana method. So vine and bud. Okay, but bud, yeah. But you're starting with a flower, actually. So the idea is that you start with an issue that you want to understand, that you want to go more deeply into, and that's the flower, right? So after you've done, we'll do the shamatha, and then the issue that we want to go, bless you, the issue that we want to go more deeply into is the flower of generosity. So you stay focused. You know, we will be staying focused on our breath with shamatha, and then you shift the focus to the flower, which is generosity, and you do that concentration. I'll walk you through this on the flower of generosity, and then you see what comes up as you're looking, trying to gain insight into your relationship to generosity in this case. You see what bud might emerge off of that same vine that might have to do with generosity. So, like, for instance, you could say, it could be something like, I have a hard time realizing, oh, I do have a hard time receiving, or I'm afraid to give because I won't be understood. Or there might be like some insight might come as a bud coming off of the vine. And then you bring your attention to the bud and you focus that same shamatha concentration that you had on your breath, you focus it on the bud until it opens and gives you more insight or understanding about itself and about what it's showing you about yourself or showing you about the issue at hand. And then you stay focused on that until you notice another bud. You may not have any buds. You may just stay with the original flower, but you may only have one bud, or you may have two. But if you have another bud come, then you change your focus on that second bud, and again with that same shamatha focus of concentration, and you let that open and see what it's showing you and telling you. Okay, so everybody got that? Okay, but I'll walk you through. So just letting yourself get settled, noticing all the places where the surface under you meets the different parts of your body. And just feeling that support under you. And as you do, just noticing where your breath is. Watching your breath move in and watching your breath move out. And just staying focused only on your breath. If any other thoughts should come through your mind, just let them pass through like clouds passing through the sky. And then return to your breath. Just allowing yourself now to bring a flower, and the flower is generosity. Just letting yourself open to generosity the way that you would open to a flower, or that a flower would open. And just focusing on everything that comes up for you as you're looking at the issue of generosity, or as you're trying to understand generosity. Just see, as you're focused, that same one-pointed focus only on generosity. Just see if there's something that emerges for you as you're understanding and opening to this concept of generosity, perhaps an experience that you've had in your life around generosity, or a lack of generosity. And just stay focused on the flower, and that same one-pointed focus, the flower, which is now generosity. And then if you notice a related insight coming up through that concentration, imagine or sense or feel that that related insight is a bud on the same vine as that flower that you're looking at right now. The flower is generosity. Take your time. There may be no bud that comes up. It may just be an experience of generosity that you're having as you stay in that one-pointed focus. There might be related subjects or experiences or concepts that emerge from this contemplation of generosity. And if that's the case, shift your focus to the bud, bringing the diamond drill of your concentration into the bud, and see what opens there for you and what further insights the bud may have for you related to your experience or your relationship to generosity. Just continue working in this way. It may not go very quickly at all, or the buds may come in quick succession, or there may be no buds. Just staying focused on generosity with one-pointed focus. And see what might emerge. Just taking a moment to review what buds may have emerged and how they may have opened with your concentration. And what insights you may have gained about generosity as a result. Just summarizing what you've learned, connecting the dots between the different the buds on the vine that have become flowers, or just focusing on the one flower, what you learned by going deeply into the concept of generosity just in that one place. And then just coming back to your breath, just focusing only on your breath. And then when you're ready, just beginning to follow your breath back out into the room as you exhale. Feeling the surface under you again. You want to stretch a bit as you come back into the room. Just taking all the time that you need to come back fully into the room. And when you're ready, just you can write down any reflections you have or just reflect on your meditation. So does anyone have any thoughts or anything they'd like to share? Might be an idea to share together. Would you like to do that, share in twos? But people online, that might be hard. We can't do breakout rooms. What?
I could do breakout rooms, but often people online don't.
Okay. Who would like to do group share? Raise your hand. Who would like to do one-on-one share? Sounds like group share. Okay. If anyone wants to share anything. Anyone have any thoughts?
I felt like the flower that came was sort of like, there's a sense of, from what you had shared, there's a sense that came up in me about indebtedness. Like if somebody gives me something, then I owe them something. So I'm kind of tied to them, and it feels like that it's being captured. And so the giving it back frees me from that. Like, oh, I don't have to think about that anymore. And then the contrast of it was thinking about the sort of the generosity that you were talking about, or the generosity displayed by the Dalai Lama, or the generosity displayed by a flower, just kind of beaming itself out when there's no sense of, that kind of transactional, like I give you, you give me, the sort of capitalistic sort of thing we're embedded in. So there's something about giving freely without thought of return. Something that feels like it's a good practice for me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mace has something.
That was really helpful, because what I saw was that I have this incredibly natural, sort of like inspirational generosity that's just like part of my true nature. And then, so that was almost like this table of like true nature side and then the conditioned side. And then there's all this like, in the conditioned side, I have tremendous amounts of should and guilt around. Like I feel like I should be more generous, and I have guilt, like particularly around this sort of economic privilege that I just happen to be born into. And so there's like a compulsiveness, and that's often fed by anxiety and fear, right? Like, oh, there's like the world is fucking falling apart. I have to give money for something, like kind of. And then I also have a very hard time receiving. So like, I just like, people will say, oh, I don't even know, this one knows. If we go out to dinner with people and they're like, oh, we'd love to take you out to dinner. My first reaction is like, no, 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 no. So it was just very interesting. I mean, I knew all of that. I just hadn't really like seen it all together. But underneath it, it really is a very genuine, natural desire to be generous, like naturally generous. Just like, how kids just like will hand you their whatever, their dirt in that story. Yeah. So.
It's, I teach a class called The Path of Service. And I think you've probably taken that class, right?
I think that's the one I've been avoiding.
Yeah.
Did we take it? Was that the one that kicked our asses? Yeah. Yeah.
And in that class, one of the last meditations is, because that class is for people who, trying to understand, what it is to be of service, what is service, and how do you take care of yourself in the midst of being of service, right? And one of the last meditations in that class is what does it mean to be of service to your own generous nature, right? That might be really helpful for you to return to. That might help you with all of that, all those twists and turns.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions?
I just appreciate you bringing the topic, actually. And the meditation was really lovely, mostly because I just had a couple of things happened where the flower and just kind of feeling the feeling of generosity. And it was just like this very place, like the Dharma Collective, and like how it is functioning on generosity, like straight up. Every single person who participates in this space, like, and it was just like really strong, that feeling of this arising and the generosity that's just that causes it to happen. So that became very apparent, and then yeah, it's funny. It became, well, the other thing, just like, maybe I'll just stay there. The other thing that was really came from that was the generosity of meditation in a group kind of setting, of like each of us, we, by sitting in our own presence and not trying to like meddle with your presence, is like hugely generous. And that like maybe I could be a person who was safe enough for like you to just sit over there with like with yourself, and like you could be a person that was safe enough for me to just like sit over here with myself and just kind of allow that unfolding and that like, it's unbelievable, really. Like that's unbelievable.
That is,
Oh,
he said raising the roof. But that's getting into the enlightened state, right? That's what you're describing is the stepping into the enlightened state place. You know, the beginning of the class, I was talking about the higher self place, you know, that sharing with each other, being like, I always feel that whenever, you know, I mean, I do a meditation every day where I kind of open the field to just bring in light and power to anyone who is a student or a client or anybody, but specifically people that are on the path looking to understand things from the perspective that we're looking at it right now, you know, and I just kind of open that field. And that's where I really feel the connection with everyone on that higher self level, you know, where you're just, that was the thing that I was trying to evoke in the story with the monks, where we're all just kind of sitting in silence. That where we're sitting with each other, where there's like no energetic exchange agenda at all, and that just being in that expanded place together. That is the beauty of the Sangha, right? I mean, what a gift to be able to be with each other in that place. You know, it's just heaven. You know, so thank you for bringing that forward. But you can see the practice takes you into that place. That there's the demonstration of understanding, looking into understanding a particular paramita, and looking on shifting all of the relationships that you might have to it, or expanding all of the getting a larger expanded relationship to it, brings you into a more enlightened state. And that's what the Paramitas are doing. It's like each one is a doorway into a more enlightened state. You know, and the practice of each one will bring you into, it'll be one facet, one aspect of the enlightened state that's illuminated for you through the practice of the Paramitas, right? It's like this amazing formula of, you know, it seems like it's just a word, okay, joy, you know, of effort, you know, but then when you go into it, it's like, opens it up, which is why I love the Paramitas. I just love them. I always feel like I'm saying it like, you know, I hear my accent, my American accent, when I say Paramita. I feel like there must be a more elegant way to say it. Paramita, you know, not like a Paramita. Yeah, right. Oh. Anyone have anything else they'd like to share? Anyone online? No?
yesterday I went to this like connection networking type of event, and then I had to gaze eyes, like eye gaze with somebody like 2 or 4 minutes, like a stranger, and it felt like really long and kind of trippy. And then like I was present, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna like start emanating love to this person. Like, you know, I was doing things, and then I was like, and then I thought, why do I have to do that? Like, and then I thought like, oh, like, then later I was thinking like, is this kind of my like way of being, like maybe how I kind of get loved, or like by being useful and giving, you know? So I was like, okay, how can I be like, but I thought like for example, like I really like Tom, and I don't have to like be projecting like love to like Tom, you know. Instead of that, like I feel like the flower is really beautiful. Like flower, just beingness is just like beaming this like beautiful essence, just like that. I feel like, how can I be like in that kind of a generous spirit and just emanating myself? Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you. There, she has a.
It's interesting hearing about everyone talking about kind of this emanation of positive feelings. I feel like when I came here and I started thinking about generosity, it's like, oh, I like that topic. You know, I like to think that I'm generous, and I could feel warm feelings. But then during the meditation itself, I feel like I felt less and less generous. And at the end, I really don't really feel anything. It went to a place of, okay, it's difficult to receive, or I don't even know what the train of thought for the buds was, but I felt like over time, it was harder and harder to feel the feelings.
Oh, it might be a good idea to, right after this, go into meditation and see if you can capture what led you there. Because it's possible, I'm not saying this is definitely true, but it's very possible that the meditation was showing you the place within you where you can't, since it seems like the predominant experience is not being able to receive or feeling constricted, right? So there's probably some train there. There's some track there of what leads you into that constricted place. And it sounds like there may be a place that's there all the time that you're not aware of. It's possible. I don't know. I would check that out to see, you know, and you know, like kind of question you could ask yourself is, do I have any resistance to receiving, or do I have any resistance to giving? You know, like to just start in those two places and see if you can pick up the thread of where the constriction might be. We all have it. I mean, I was amazed, like just when I talked to, I mean, I'm not saying you definitely do, but many of us have it, you know, of this, a kind of like some kind of constriction. Like I talked about with Jimpa, what I became aware of being in Jimpa's presence was that I had, like Mace, I have this kind of like, I want to give, you know, I love to give, you know, it's like, I just want to give, you know, it's so fun to give, you know, and, you know, and, you know, I realized that I had kind of shut that down, being in his presence, because, you know, you find people that are unconscious around you, you know, and they, you know, they may not be very nice or, you know, take what you have to offer, and then you feel bad, right? You know, but you want to get to the place where you can just be generating that all the time. Doesn't matter if they're receiving, doesn't matter. Like you, the main thing is that you know, and I do think that my feeling is that underneath all of our karmic patterns, there is that wellspring of generosity that is part of the Buddha nature. That it is within all of us, and for us to be able to tap into it and to get, you know, to transform any of the twists and turns of our karmic patterns that might be overlying it or keeping it from generating is the task, and to be fearless in that way, because I noticed what I noticed with all of Jinpa's generosity, I noticed how afraid I was to be like that, and, that was a huge teaching for me to see, like, he totally effortless. And it didn't matter who received it, how they received it, didn't matter. I'm going to be doing this, being generous, no matter what's happening. And I'm like, I'm in. I'm doing that. I'm going for that. So, yeah.
There's a comment from someone online, and then I had a comment too. They wrote, I have felt the generosity of the container created in this space tonight. It was certainly present in my meditation. At a personal level, it is easier for me to give than receive, and in this meditation, a space to receive was created and held throughout the meditation.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Something that you said just made me think about, it's a couple of things you've said tonight, actually, about, like, I've really been exploring this idea that, the Paramitas are, among other things, but especially the Paramitas, like, we practice them on our path, right, in order to make progress on our path. But I also feel like they're a fruit of the path, right? That
Right.
like, as we proceed along the path, to some extent, I've experienced this, like,
Yeah.
the generosity, the other Paramitas, they sort of come from the understanding,
Yeah.
from the clarity that the path leads to.
That's a huge teaching. Thank you. Yeah, the fruit of it. That's great. Thank you. Wow. All right. Well, thank you all for being here, and wonderful to be back in the collective. And we'll be back. I'll be back. You guys will be back probably sooner than I'll be back. But I'll be back teaching soon. I should have gotten the dates, but May 12th. Thank you. May 12th. And maybe we'll do joy. Maybe we'll look at that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and close circle for tonight. The sun is a circle. The moon is a circle. The earth is a circle. The drum is a circle. We are a circle within a circle. Thank you, everyone. The power of this circle remains a non-ordinary reality. You can call upon it at any time. Thank you.